He married out of obligation and swore he would never love her. But a message on her phone made his blood boil. The cold man became a hostage to jealousy and his own passion, and the fake marriage ended up becoming the love of his life. What do you think will happen in this story? Comment and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. London never sleeps. The city pulses, breathes, shouts and whispers all at once. Between glass skyscrapers and congested avenues, there are stories no one sees. Stories of people trapped in gilded cages, suffocated by heavy surnames, imprisoned by expectations born even before them. This is one of those stories. A story about a man who had everything but himself, and about a woman who had nothing but her own essence. Philip Alistair Blackwood grew up under invisible spotlights. Every step was measured, every word was calculated, every smile had a purpose. He wasn't just a son, he was the heir. The future of an empire built with the sweat, tears and sacrifices of 3 generations. From childhood, he learned that feelings were dangerous luxuries, that crying was weakness, that loving was risking. His father, Augustus Blackwood, was a titan of business, ruthless, brilliant, distant. His mother, Cecilia, an ethereal figure who moved through salons like an elegant ghost, always smiling, never present. Philip learned early that, in that family, affection came wrapped in checks and opportunities, never in hugs. When he was 12, Philip asked his father if he was happy. Augustus stopped reading the newspaper, looked at his son over his glasses and said only one sentence that would echo forever in the boy's mind. "Happiness is for those who can afford not to have responsibilities. You cannot." Those words were the sentence. From that day on, Philip buried any remnants of his own dreams. He studied administration because it was expected. He earned a master's in finance because it was the path. He took positions in the company because it was his destiny. And when he looked in the mirror, he saw a stranger. A 32-year-old man, impeccably dressed, incredibly successful, and completely empty. Then came the day that changed everything, a cold, grey Tuesday morning. Philip was in a meeting with international investors when his phone rang. It was his father's personal secretary, her voice trembling. "Mr. Philip, you need to come now. Your father had a collapse. He's in the hospital." The words seemed distant, as if they came from another dimension. Philip hung up, apologized to the foreign executives, and left the room with the same controlled expression as always. But inside, something was cracking. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. It was panic. The panic of someone who always knew this day would come, but never truly prepared for it. At the hospital, he found his mother sitting in the waiting room, her hands trembling as she clutched a designer purse. She wasn't crying, she just stared into space. The doctors were direct. Augustus Blackwood had suffered a severe stroke. He was stable, but the damage was extensive. He would need months, perhaps years of recovery. He could no longer run the company. Perhaps he would never be the same again. Philip listened to everything in silence. He thanked the doctors. He comforted his mother with mechanical words. And when he finally found himself alone in the cold hospital corridor, he leaned his forehead against the cold wall and took a deep breath. Now it was him. The weight of the empire rested entirely on his shoulders. In the days that followed, Philip assumed the presidency of Blackwood Holdings. The transition was quick, almost brutal. Shareholders needed security. Employees needed leadership. Partners needed guarantees. And Philip delivered all of this with the efficiency of a machine. He worked 18 hours a day. He reorganized departments. He renegotiated contracts. He stabilized the crisis. But inside he was falling apart. Every decision was a weight. Every meeting was a test. Every night was insomnia. He had no choice. Either he became what everyone expected, or everything would collapse. It was in this context that his paternal grandparents, Lady Helena and Lord Anthony, appeared. They were imposing figures, relics of a time when agreements were sealed with handshakes and promises were worth more than contracts. Lady Helena was an 83-year-old woman, elegant, astute, and ruthless. Lord Anthony, at 86, had the posture of someone who built an empire from scratch and tolerated no weaknesses. They requested a private meeting with Philip. In the office that once belonged to Augustus, they sat before their grandson and went straight to the point. Philip, the company, is at risk, not because of finances, because of its image. Your father was the face of Blackwood. You are still young, single, seen as immature by more traditional investors. We need stability. We need an image of responsibility. Lady Helena paused, her sharp eyes studying her grandson. We need you to get married. Philip almost laughed. Marry? He barely had time to sleep, let alone for relationships. But before he could protest, Lord Anthony placed a folder on the table. We've already taken care of everything. We know the perfect family, good people with solid values. The young woman is educated, qualified, hard-working, and she is willing to accept an agreement that benefits everyone. Philip opened the folder. Inside there were documents, photos, detailed information, and at the center of it all, a photograph. A woman with brown eyes, dark hair, a serene expression. Lara Miller, architect, 28 years old. Philip studied the photo. She was beautiful, with a simple, natural beauty. Nothing like the models who frequented his circles. There was something genuine about that face, but what intrigued him most was her story. Lara was the daughter of a small businessman who had passed away years ago, leaving a struggling family business. Her mother, Mrs. Beatrice, had tried to keep the business going, but the debts were too great. The family was on the verge of bankruptcy, and Lara, as the only child, carried the burden of saving what remained. His grandparents explained the proposal. Philip would marry Lara. In return, the Blackwood family would pay off all the debts of Miller Enterprises and make investments to rebuild the business. It would be a marriage of convenience, a business arrangement. No feelings, no complications, just a strategic union that would solve problems on both sides. Philip remained, silent for long minutes. The idea was absurd, medieval, but it was also practical. And at that point in his life, he had no energy to fight everything at once. I accept, but with conditions. I want it clear to her that this is just a contract. No romantic expectations, no illusions. We live under the same roof, maintain public appearances, but each lives their own life. Lady Helena smiled, satisfied. We imagined you would say that. She is aware. The young woman is intelligent. She knows exactly what she's getting into. The agreement was sealed right there, papers were signed, dates were set. And Philip left that meeting with the strange feeling of having sold his own soul. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, in a modest neighborhood in the East End of London, Lara Miller faced her own battle. The small accounting firm her father had left was suffocating in debt. Her mother, Mrs. Beatrice, a strong woman who had raised her daughter alone after being widowed, tried to maintain her dignity, but Lara saw the despair in her eyes. Every bill that arrived was a blow. Every collection call was a humiliation. Lara worked as an architect in a small office, but her salary barely covered basic expenses. She was exhausted from fighting, exhausted from seeing her mother waste away with worry. It was Mrs. Beatrice who received Lady Helena's visit. The two women had known each other for a long time, from a time when their families still had some proximity. Lady Helena was kind but direct. She explained the situation, she explained the proposal, and laid everything on the table. Your daughter marries my grandson. In return, all debts are paid off and your company can breathe again. It's a fair deal. No one loses out. Mrs. Beatrice was shocked, but she was also desperate. She called Lara, explained everything, and waited. Lara remained silent. The proposal was surreal. Marry a stranger? Live a lie? She had always dreamed of true love, of a partner who saw her for who she truly was, who loved her for herself. But reality was cruel. Her mother was sick with worry. Her father's company, the only legacy he had left, was dying, and she, Lara, had the power to change that. All she had to do was accept. All she had to do was give up her own dreams. She looked at her mother, saw the wrinkles of worry, the white hair, the trembling hands, and she made her decision. "I accept, but with one condition. I want to continue working. I want my independence. I won't be a decorative wife." Lady Helena smiled. "My grandson doesn't want a decorative wife. He wants peace. You can have your career. You can have your life. Just keep up appearances. The rest, you resolve between yourselves." And so, without ever having met, Philip and Lara had their destinies intertwined. The first meeting happened 2 weeks before the wedding. It was at Philip's grandparents' apartment, a spacious and exquisite place in Kensington. Lara arrived accompanied by her mother, nervous, wearing a simple but elegant outfit. Philip arrived directly from a meeting, still in his suit, his tie slightly loosened. When their eyes met, there was a strange silence. It wasn't attraction, it wasn't repulsion, it was recognition, as if both saw the same thing in the other, someone trapped, someone sacrificing themselves. Lady Helena made the formal introductions. "Philip and Lara, this is an important moment. You will build a partnership, respect each other, and everything will work out." Philip extended his hand. Lara shook it. His skin was cold, hers trembling. "We need to talk. Alone," Philip suggested, his voice firm. Lara agreed. They moved to the balcony while their families remained in the living room. Outside, with a view of the illuminated city, Philip was direct. "I want to make everything clear. This is an agreement. I am not looking for love. I am not looking for companionship. You will have your life. I will have mine. We live together only to maintain appearances. Nothing more than that." Lara stared at him. She expected coldness, but not this much. "I understand. I'm not here by choice either. I'm here for my mother, for my father's legacy, so we are aligned." Philip nodded. "Good. The wedding will be discreet. Afterwards you move into my house. There's enough space for both of us to keep our distance." Lara felt a tightening in her chest. It was so clinical, so cold, but it was what she had accepted. The wedding took place in a small ceremony, in an elegant registry office in central London. Lara wore a simple white dress, Philip a navy blue suit. There was no party, no celebration, just witnesses, signatures, and an awkward silence. When the official said, "You may kiss the bride," Philip hesitated. Lara did too. They exchanged a quick, formal, emotionless kiss, and when they left, they were already husband and wife. On paper. Only on paper. Philip's house was everything Lara imagined and feared. A modern mansion in a gated community in Surrey Hills with impeccable gardens, a heated pool, and architecture that looked more like an art gallery. Everything was white, black, and grey. Everything was minimalist. Everything was cold. Philip showed her the rooms quickly. "This is your room. That's mine. The kitchen is over there. I have a housekeeper who comes 3 times a week. If you need anything, just let me know." Lara looked at the room that would be hers. It was huge, well decorated, comfortable, but it felt like a hotel. It didn't feel like a home. In the first few days, they barely saw each other. Philip left early and returned late. Lara explored the house, trying to get used to the space, but felt like an intruder. She ate alone, watched TV alone, slept alone, and when she crossed paths with Philip in the corridors, they only exchanged polite greetings. "Good morning." "Good night." "Do you need anything?" "I'm fine." It was like living with a ghost, but Lara was not the type to settle. She had promised herself that she would maintain her identity. So, she started looking for job opportunities. She updated her portfolio, sent out resumes. And when she was called for an interview at a small community architecture studio, she felt a glimmer of hope. The studio, called Urban Roots, was in a modest room in Shoreditch. The team was small but passionate. They worked on social projects, revitalization of public spaces, affordable housing. It was everything Lara had always wanted to do. The interview was with Marcus, a 40-year-old architect with kind eyes and a greying beard. He flipped through Lara's portfolio, impressed. "You have talent and sensitivity. It's rare to find someone who designs thinking about people, not just aesthetics." Lara smiled genuinely. It's what I've always believed. Architecture has to transform lives. Marcus hired her on the spot. Welcome to the team. Here we don't earn much, but we make a difference. For Lara, that was everything. When she told Philip she had gotten a job, he was in his private study at home, surrounded by papers and charts. He looked up, disinterested. Good for you. Just don't let it interfere with your public obligations. We have social events you'll need to attend. Lara felt anger rise. Public obligations. That's how he saw their marriage, a series of obligations. I'll be there, whenever necessary, but my work is important to me. Philip went back to looking at his papers. As long as you understand your priorities. The conversation ended there, dry, cold, distant. At the Urban Roots studio, Lara found something she didn't have at home: belonging. She worked alongside Marcus, Julia, a young urban planner full of energy, and Theo, a talented draftsman. They laughed together, discussed projects, drank coffee from mismatched mugs. It was chaotic, but it was real, and Lara felt alive there. For the first time in months, she truly smiled. One day, while working on a revitalization project for a square in Brixton, Marcus started a conversation. You seem different, Lara. Lighter. She smiled. I guess it's because here I feel like myself. Marcus looked at her curiously. And at home you don't. The question caught Lara by surprise. She hesitated. At home I'm Mrs. Blackwood. Here I'm just Lara. Marcus nodded, understanding. I see, but don't forget that you'll always be Lara, regardless of the surname. Marcus's words echoed. Lara realized she was losing herself, that she was molding herself to fit into a space that wasn't hers. But she also knew she couldn't just abandon everything. There was an agreement, there were expectations, there was a mother who finally slept peacefully, knowing the debts were paid. So Lara did what she knew best. She balanced. During the day, she was the passionate architect. At night, she was the silent wife. But Philip began to notice something. Lara was changing. She came home with sparkling eyes, spoke on the phone with enthusiasm about projects, laughed, and that bothered him. It wasn't jealousy. It couldn't be. It was just irritation. Irritation at seeing that she could be happy, while he sank deeper and deeper into endless meetings and impossible decisions. He tried to ignore it, tried to keep his distance. But there was something about her that disquieted him. One night, Lara arrived home late. She had stayed at the studio finishing an important presentation. When she entered the house, Philip was in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his tie tossed on the sofa. You're coming home late. His voice sounded harsher than he intended. Lara frowned. I was working. Philip took a sip. Working or having fun? Lara felt anger rise. What does that mean? It means you seem very animated lately. I hope you're not forgetting your role here. Lara took a step forward, her eyes flashing. My role? My role is to be invisible, to be decorative. Sorry, Philip, but I have a life, and I won't ask permission to live it. The argument escalated. Harsh words were exchanged. Philip accused Lara of being ungrateful. Lara accused Philip of being controlling. And when silence finally fell, both were breathless, distant, hurt. Philip was the first to turn away. Do whatever you want. Just don't embarrass me. Lara felt tears burn, but she didn't let them fall. I would never do that, but I also won't let you extinguish me. She went up to her room and locked the door. That night, she cried herself to sleep. The days that followed were tense. Philip and Lara barely spoke. They fulfilled the bare minimum. But something had changed. There was a crack in the wall they had both built. And through the gaps, things neither of them was prepared to face began to appear. Feelings, questions, the uncomfortable realization that perhaps that agreement wasn't as simple as it first seemed. And as London continued to pulse outside, indifferent to personal dramas, Philip and Lara led their parallel lives. Two strangers under the same roof. Two souls trapped in different cages. But fate, as always, had other plans. Plans that would begin to unfold in ways neither of them imagined. because sometimes the coldest agreements are those that unintentionally ignite the most intense flames. And what began as a contract was about to transform into something much bigger, something dangerous, something inevitable. The months passed like pages of a book no one wanted to read. Philip plunged deeper and deeper into work, as if the company were a refuge where feelings were not allowed to enter. Meeting after meeting, business trips, dinners with investors. He became an even more hardened version of himself. And the more he tried to control everything around him, the more he felt something inside him slipping through his fingers. Something he couldn't name. Something that deeply bothered him. Lara, on the other hand, flourished. At the Urban Roots studio, she found not just a job, but a purpose. Every project was an opportunity to make a difference. She designed squares for underprivileged communities, planned renovations for public schools, created spaces that restored dignity to people. And in this, she found meaning. Marcus became not just a boss, but a friend. He taught her, challenged her, made her see beyond the obvious. You have a rare gift, Lara. You design with your heart. Never lose that. It was on a rainy June afternoon that everything began to change. Lara was at the studio, focused on a revitalization project for a community centre in South London, when her phone vibrated. It was a message from Julia, the urban planner from the office. Lara, look at this. The City Council has opened a tender for a huge project, renovation of a historic square in the city centre. It's our chance to showcase our work. Lara felt her heart race. A public tender meant visibility. It meant recognition. It meant their work could reach a new level. The team met immediately. Marcus brought the tender. Documents. The project was ambitious. Trafalgar Square, one of London's landmarks, needed a complete revitalization. The proposal had to include accessibility, sustainability, historical preservation, and community integration. It was exactly the kind of challenge Urban Roots loved. We're going to participate, Marcus decided, his eyes shining. We're going to show that small studios can also do great things. Lara immersed herself in the project. She spent hours drawing, researching, refining every detail. She wanted that proposal to be perfect. She wanted to prove that architecture was not just for the rich, but for everyone. And when they finally finished the presentation, the entire team was exhausted but proud. Marcus looked at Lara with admiration. You were incredible. This project has your soul. Lara smiled. Her heart warmed. It was everyone's work. He placed his hand on her shoulder, a gentle gesture. But you were the flame, never doubt that. That touch, that look, those words. There was nothing wrong. It was just recognition, appreciation. But for Lara, who lived in a cold marriage, it touched something deep. She felt seen, valued. For the first time in months, someone saw her as more than a surname or an obligation. And that both frightened and comforted her. That night, Lara arrived home later than usual. She was excited, full of energy, talking on the phone with Julia about final adjustments. She entered through the kitchen, left her bag on the counter, and went straight to the fridge to get water. She didn't notice that her phone had been left in her bag. She didn't notice that a new message from Marcus had arrived, and she didn't notice that Philip was there, standing at the kitchen entrance, watching. Philip had arrived home early that day, something rare. He was tired, frustrated with a negotiation that hadn't gone as planned. He just wanted silence. But when he saw Lara's bag on the counter and heard her phone vibrating insistently, something in him gave in to curiosity. He wasn't the type to invade privacy, but something pulled him. He picked up the phone. The screen was unlocked, and there was Marcus's message. You shone today, Lara. It's an honor to work by your side. Every day you surprise me more. Philip felt something strange in his chest. It wasn't just irritation, it was something more visceral, more primitive. Who was this Marcus? Why was he talking to Lara like that? Why did she allow it? Philip knew he was being irrational. The message was professional, respectful. But those words, that tone, that intimacy, he hated it deeply. And when Lara appeared in the kitchen, smiling, distracted, he couldn't control himself. Who is Marcus? Philip's voice cut through the air like a blade. Lara stopped, confused. "What?" Philip held up the phone. "Who is this Marcus, who sends you messages saying you shine?" Lara felt her blood run cold. "You went through my phone?" Philip ignored the question. "Answer what I asked. Who is—" "Hey?" Lara felt rage explode. "He's my boss, and you have no right to invade my privacy." The argument escalated quickly. Philip accused Lara of being naive, of not realizing that this man clearly had ulterior motives. Lara retorted by saying that Philip was delusional, that he saw things where there was nothing, that Marcus was married, had children, was an honorable man. But Philip didn't listen. He was blind with something he could finally name: jealousy. An irrational, intense, destructive jealousy. "You are my wife. You have obligations. You have an image to uphold. And I will not allow just anyone to destroy all that." Lara was speechless. "Your wife, only on paper, Philip. Or did you forget? You yourself said each of us would lead our own lives, and now you come here to control me." Philip clenched his fists. "I'm not controlling you. I'm protecting you from yourself." Lara took a step forward, her eyes shining with tears of anger. "I don't need your protection. I need respect, and you just lost the little you still had." She snatched the phone from his hands and left the kitchen, quickly going up to her room. That night, neither of them slept. Philip stayed in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his mind in turmoil. He knew he had exaggerated. He knew he had no right to invade her privacy. But that feeling, that fear of losing her, was stronger than reason. And that frightened him, because it meant he cared. It meant that this marriage of convenience was becoming something more, and he didn't know how to deal with it. In the following days, the tension was palpable. Philip and Lara barely looked at each other, but something had changed in him. He began to observe her from afar. He noticed how she smiled on the phone when she talked to her studio team. He noticed how her eyes lit up when she spoke about the projects. He noticed how she was loved and admired by those people, and that gnawed at him inside. Because he realized too late that he had never given that to her. He had never valued her. He had never truly seen her. And then the idea came. Dark, manipulative, destructive. Philip discovered, through contacts at the city council, about the Trafalgar Square tender. He discovered that the urban Root Studio had submitted a proposal, and he decided that Blackwood Holdings would also participate, not because it needed to, not because it made strategic sense, but because he wanted to take that victory from her. He wanted to take her out of that environment. He wanted to distance her from Marcus. He wanted to control the situation in the only way he knew how, with power and money. Philip mobilized the best corporate architecture team money could buy. He gave clear orders. "I want the best proposal. I want something no one can beat, and I don't care how much it costs." The architects worked day and night. They created a technically impeccable proposal with cutting-edge resources, sustainable technology, modern design. It was objectively superior in all technical aspects, but it lacked soul. It lacked the human connection that Lara's project overflowed with. When the news leaked to the press that powerful Blackwood Holdings was competing in the same tender as small studios, there was an uproar. Journalists began to investigate, and it didn't take long for them to discover the connection. Philip Blackwood was competing directly against the studio where his own wife worked. The narrative spread like wildfire. Insecure magnate pursues wife. Businessman uses power to sabotage spouse's career. Jealousy or control? The perfect marriage reveals its cracks. Lara found out from television. She was at the studio when Julia turned on the TV during lunch. The report was devastating. Images of Philip and Lara at public events, speculations about their marriage, fierce criticism of Philip's behavior, and at the center of it all, Lara's public humiliation. She felt the world collapse. Marcus tried to comfort her, but she was in shock. How could he? How could he do something like that? At Blackwood Holdings, chaos was total. Shareholders were furious. The company's image was tarnished, and Philip was having a meltdown. The board meeting was brutal. "Have you lost your mind, sir?" One of the oldest directors bellowed. "This is a public relations disaster. We're being massacred by the media, and all because of an irrelevant project." Philip tried to defend himself, but the words wouldn't come out. He knew he had made a catastrophic mistake, a mistake driven by pride, jealousy, and a sick need for control. And then Lara entered. She passed security, went straight to the boardroom, and opened the door without knocking. All the executives fell silent. She was impeccable, her face serene, but her eyes were pure fire. "I need to speak to my husband. Now." The executives looked at Philip. He nodded, defeated. Everyone left, leaving the two of them alone. Lara stood, arms crossed. Philip, seated, looked smaller than ever. The silence was deafening. "You humiliated me," Lara began, her voice controlled but vibrating with emotion. "In front of everyone, in front of my team, my friends, my family. You used your power to try to destroy me, and why? Because you saw an innocent message, because you can't stand to see me happy?" Philip looked up, and for the first time Lara saw something she had never seen before. Vulnerability. "I didn't want to destroy you. I wanted to protect you." His voice was hoarse. Lara gave a bitter laugh. "Protect? You wanted to control me? Like you control everything in your life, but I'm not a company, Philip. I'm not an asset you can manage. I'm a person, with dreams, with desires, with dignity." Philip stood up, his legs trembling. I know, and I messed everything up. Lara, I don't know how to deal with this, with what I'm feeling." Lara frowned. "Feeling what?" Philip ran his hand through his hair, desperate. "Fear. Fear of losing you. Fear that you'll realize you deserve someone better. Someone who sees you. Someone like that. Marcus." Lara was silent, processing. "You're jealous?" Philip nodded, ashamed. "And that gives you the right to ruin my life? To use your power against me?" "No," Philip admitted, his voice breaking. "It doesn't. And I'm going to fix this. I'm going to cancel the proposal. I'm going to retract publicly. I'm going to do whatever it takes." Lara shook her head, tired. "It's not enough, Philip. You crossed a line. You showed who you really are, and I can't live like this." Philip felt panic take over. "What are you saying?" Lara took a deep breath. "I'm saying I'm leaving. I'm leaving this house, this fake marriage. I'm taking back my life. My true life." Philip took a step forward. "Lara, please." She raised her hand, stopping him from approaching. "No. You treated me like a piece on your chessboard, like something you could manipulate. And I deserve more than that, I always have." She left the room without looking back. She left Philip there, shattered, facing for the first time the real consequences of his actions. And as she went down in the elevator, Lara felt the tears finally fall. She had believed for a brief moment that perhaps she could find something true in that marriage of lies. But she was foolish. People like Philip don't change, and she wasn't going to wait to find out. That night, Lara packed her bags. She took only the essentials: clothes, documents, a few personal items. She left behind all the luxury, all the ostentation, and moved into a small apartment that a college friend had offered. It was simple, small, but it was hers, and for the first time in months she breathed a sigh of relief. Philip, alone in the empty mansion, walked through the rooms like a ghost. Every space echoed with her absence. He tried to work but couldn't concentrate. He tried to sleep, but the nights were endless. And when he looked in the mirror, he saw a man he didn't recognize. A man who had become exactly what he had always hated in his father: controlling, cold, destructive. It was Lord Anthony, his grandfather, who finally confronted him. He appeared at the mansion without warning, his eyes severe. "You disappointed everyone, Philip, especially yourself." Philip tried to defend himself, but his grandfather didn't let him. "That young woman was the best thing that could have happened to you. And you treated her like dirt. Why? Out of pride? Out of fear?" Philip had no answers. Lord Anthony sighed, his voice softening. "Do you know why your grandmother and I arranged this marriage?" Philip shook his head. Because her father, Mr. Miller, saved our company 30 years ago. When we were on the verge of bankruptcy, he invested everything he had to help us, without fanfare, without asking for favors, just because he was a good man. And when he passed away, we were left with a moral debt. Marrying you to Lara was a way to honor that man, to take care of his family, but it was also a chance for you to find something you never had, true love. Philip was paralyzed. Lara's father had saved his family, and he never knew. Lord Anthony placed a hand on his grandson's shoulder. You have two choices now, boy. Accept that you lost and continue to be the cold man you've become. Or fight. Fight for real. Not with power or money, but with humility and truth. The words echoed. And when his grandfather left, Philip collapsed onto the sofa, the weight of everything finally crushing him. He had lost Lara. But worse than that, he had lost himself. And as night fell over London, Philip made a decision. He would fix it, not to win her back, because perhaps that was impossible, but because it was the right thing to do, because she deserved it, and because for the first time in his life he needed to do something not out of duty, but out of love. A love that only now, too late, he was beginning to understand. Dawn arrived with painful clarity. Philip hadn't slept. He had spent the entire night in his father's study, surrounded by old documents, yellowed photos, memories of a time he had never bothered to get to know. Lord Anthony had left a box before leaving. Documents that belonged to Augustus. Documents that told a story Philip was completely unaware of. And the more he read, the more ashamed he became. There were contracts signed in the 90s. Receipts, 4 bank transfers, and letters. Handwritten letters between Augustus Blackwood and Robert Miller, Lara's father. The words were formal, but laden with gratitude. Robert, without you, we would have lost everything. Your generosity saved not only our company, but our family. We will never forget. One of the oldest letters was from Lady Helena, written in delicate script. Dear Robert, we have no words to thank you. You are a rare man in this world, and we promise that one day we will repay this kindness. Philip held the letters with trembling hands. Robert Miller had invested his life savings to save the Blackwoods. He didn't ask for a share in the company. He didn't charge exorbitant interest. He just helped because he believed in people. And when the Blackwoods finally managed to get back on their feet, they returned the money with interest. But Robert never accepted anything beyond the original amount. He said he didn't need profit. He just needed to see friends prosper. And now Philip understood. The marriage was not just a business arrangement. It was a way for his grandparents to honor that man. It was an attempt to protect his daughter, to ensure she never suffered hardship, to repay the kindness that had once saved them. But Philip had turned it into a prison. He had treated Lara like merchandise. He had dishonored the memory of a man to whom his own family owed everything. The shame was suffocating. Philip put the letters back in the box and made a decision. He needed to fix it, not in the way he always had, with money and power, but for real, with humility, with recognition, with everything he had never learned to give. He picked up the phone and made the first of many difficult calls. Marcus answered suspiciously. Hello? Marcus, this is Philip Blackwood. There was a long pause. What do you want? The voice was harsh. Philip took a deep breath. I want to apologize. To you, to your team, and especially to Lara. I made a terrible mistake, and I'm going to correct it. Marcus didn't soften. You humiliated my colleague. You tarnished our studio's name. And now you want to apologize? Philip felt the weight of the accusation. I know, and I know words aren't enough. That's why I'm formally withdrawing Blackwood Holdings' proposal from the tender. And more than that, I'm going to make a significant donation to your studio. Anonymous, if you prefer. But I want you to have the resources to continue doing the incredible work you do. Marcus was silent. Philip continued. I'm not doing this to buy forgiveness. I'm doing it because it's the right thing, because you deserve it, because Lara deserves it, and because I need to start doing things for the right reasons. Marcus sighed. You hurt her a lot, Blackwood. I know, And I'll carry that forever, but at least I can try not to cause any more damage. The call ended without promises of reconciliation, but it was a start. The following weeks were the hardest of Philip's life. He kept his word. He publicly withdrew the proposal from the tender, admitting that it had been a judgment error motivated by personal issues. He issued formal apologies through his press office, and he made a multi-million-pound, completely anonymous donation to the Community Architecture Fund that supported small studios like Urban Roots. The press speculated, but never managed to confirm the source of the donation. But that wasn't enough for Philip. He knew he needed more. He needed a real transformation. That's when he sought out Mrs. Martha, his father's former secretary. She had worked with Augustus for 40 years. She knew the family better than anyone. And when Philip appeared at her simple house in a quiet neighborhood of Greenwich, she received him with surprise and caution. "Mrs. Martha, I need help," Philip said, sitting in her small living room, a cup of coffee in his hand. "You knew my father better than I did. Help me understand what happened to me. Why did I become this?" Mrs. Martha studied him for a long moment, then she sighed. "Sit up. Straight, boy. I'm going to tell you some truths that might hurt to hear," she began slowly. "Your father wasn't always cold. When I first met him, he was a dreamy young man. He wanted to build things. He wanted to make a difference. But your grandfather, God rest his soul, was a hard man. He demanded too much, expected perfection. And your father was shaped by that pressure. Until one day, he simply gave up on feeling, gave up on dreaming, and became just work." Mrs. Martha paused. "And with you he did the same thing. He raised you to be strong, but he forgot to teach you to be human." Philip felt the words cut deep. "And is there a way to fix it?" Mrs. Martha smiled sadly. "There always is, but not with money or power. It has to be with truth, with a willingness to change, to be vulnerable, to admit you're wrong, and especially to serve." Philip frowned. "Serve?" She nodded. "Yes, serve. Put others before yourself. Learn that life isn't about controlling everything. It's about being present, about truly caring." These conversations became frequent. Every week, Philip visited Mrs. Martha. She helped him unravel childhood memories, moments when he had been genuine but was reprimanded, occasions when he showed emotion but was punished for weakness. Slowly, Philip began to understand that his coldness was not who he was. It was armor, a protection against pain. But that armor also prevented him from truly living. Meanwhile, Lara rebuilt her life. The small apartment in Shoreditch was cozy. She decorated it with plants, colorful paintings, soft cushions. It was modest, but it was hers. And for the first time, she felt she had a true home. At the studio, work remained intense. With Blackwood Holdings' withdrawal from the tender, Urban Roots proposal gained strength. They were called to present the project personally to the evaluation committee. The day of the presentation was tense. Lara, Marcus, Julia, and Theo entered the room where the evaluators waited. Lara was nervous but determined. She presented the project with passion. She spoke about inclusion, about accessibility, about how architecture could restore dignity to people. She showed every detail, every conscious choice, every element designed for the community. And when she finished, there was silence, then applause. A week later, the result. Urban Roots had won. The project would be carried out. It was the greatest professional achievement of Lara's life. When Marcus broke the news, she cried with joy, with relief, with pride. And that night, the entire team went to celebrate at an unpretentious bar in Shoreditch. They laughed, toasted, dreamed of the future. And Lara felt for the first time in a long time that she was exactly where she should be. But in a corner of the bar, someone was watching. Philip had found out about the celebration through contacts. He didn't have the courage to show up. He knew he wouldn't be welcome, but he needed to see her. He needed to be sure she was well, she was happy. And when he saw her smile, the way her eyes sparkled, he felt both joy and pain. Joy because she deserved it. Pain because he was not part of that moment. Philip was about to leave when Marcus saw him. Their eyes met. Marcus said something to Lara and stood up, walking towards Philip. "Blackwood." "Marcus," Philip replied, tense. Marcus crossed his arms. "Why are you here?" Philip hesitated. "I just wanted to see if she was okay." Marcus studied him. "She is. Without you." Philip nodded, swallowing his wounded pride. "I know, and it's good that way. She deserves to be happy." There was a moment of silence. Then Marcus sighed. "Look, I don't like you. I think you were an idiot, but I have to admit that the donation someone made to the architecture fund was incredible. It changed everything for small studios like ours." Philip neither confirmed nor denied. He just replied, "Whoever did it probably believed you deserved it." Marcus almost smiled. "You know, she doesn't talk about you, but I know she thinks. I know it hurts, and if you really care, give her time, let her heal." Philip agreed it was all he could do, but Philip had another plan. A plan that had matured during his conversations with Mrs. Martha and sleepless nights reading about Robert Miller. He wanted to create something significant, something that would honor the man who saved his family, and something that in some way would show Lara that he was changing. Not to win her back, because perhaps that was impossible, but because it was the right thing to do. Philip sought out his grandparents again. "I want to create a foundation in Lara's father's name, Robert Miller, a social architecture foundation that helps professionals and community projects with real resources, not just symbolic ones." Lady Helena and Lord Anthony exchanged glances. "It's a beautiful idea, Philip. But Lara needs to be involved. It can't just be your project," Philip agreed. "I know. That's why I need your help. I need you to talk to her, to explain about her father, about what he did for us, and to offer her the chance to lead this foundation, if she accepts, of course." His grandparents agreed. A few days later, Lady Helena visited Lara in her apartment. It was a long, emotional conversation. Lady Helena told the whole story, how Robert Miller had saved the Blackwood family, how he never asked for anything in return, how he had been a man of rare integrity, and how Lara's marriage to Philip, though arranged, was an attempt to honor that man. Lara listened in silence, tears streaming down her face. She never knew these details. She knew her father was good, generous, but she didn't realize how much. Lady Helena held her hands. "My dear, your father deserves to be remembered, and Philip wants to create a foundation in his name, a foundation that you would lead, that would make a difference in the lives of thousands of people." Lara shook her head, confused. "Why would Philip do that?" Lady Helena smiled sadly. "Because he finally understood. He understood the value of what your father did, and the value of what you do, and he wants to do something right, for the first time in his life." Lara needed time to process. The idea was beautiful. A foundation in her father's name, helping architects and social projects. It was everything she had always wanted to do. But it meant resuming contact with Philip, and she didn't know if she was ready. Lady Helena didn't pressure her. She just said, "Think carefully, my dear, not for Philip, not for us, but for your father's legacy, and for all the people who could be helped." 2 weeks later, Lara made her decision. She would accept, but with conditions. She sent a message to Philip through Lady Helena. "I accept to lead the foundation, but you cannot just be a distant financier. You need to be involved. Truly, you need to understand the work, and for that you will start from the bottom. You will work on the construction sites of the projects we support. You will learn the value of every brick. Only then will you understand what your money truly means." When Philip received the message, he smiled for the first time in weeks. She was giving him a chance, not for reconciliation, but for redemption, and he accepted without hesitation. They arranged a meeting to discuss the details. It was at Lara's apartment, neutral, without the pressure of the mansion or the office. When Philip entered, he was surprised. The space was small but full of life. It had her personality in every corner. It was the complete opposite of the house where they had lived together. Lara was serious, professional. "Sit, Philip. Let's talk about how this will work." Philip sat, attentive. Lara took a deep breath. The foundation will be called the Robert Miller Institute. We will support community architecture projects throughout the UK. I will select the projects, manage the team, define the priorities. You will provide the resources, and, as I said, you will work directly on the construction sites. Philip agreed. I understand, and I accept. Lara studied him. Why are you doing this, Philip? Truly. Philip met her gaze. Because I was wrong. About everything. In the way I treated you, in the way I saw the world. And because I learned that your father saved my family when no one else believed in them. And I dishonored his memory by treating you that way. I want to fix it. Not to win you back because I know I lost that right, but because it's what I must do. Lara felt the words touch something in her, but she didn't let her guard down. I will hold you accountable, Philip. I will demand the utmost from you, and if you fail, I will leave and take the foundation with me. Philip nodded. Fair. They spent hours discussing details, budgets, structures, partnerships, and for the first time since their marriage they truly talked, not as husband and wife, but as two people trying to build something greater than themselves. And when Philip left that night, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. A purpose that didn't come from family obligation or social pressure, but from his own choice. The foundation was officially launched 3 months later. It was a simple but significant event. Mrs. Beatrice, Lara's mother, was there, emotional to see her husband's name being honored. Marcus and the Urban Roots team also attended, supporting Lara. And Philip, for the first time in public, was not in the spotlight. He stood to the side, watching Lara shine as she presented the foundation's mission. When she spoke about her father, about his kindness, about how architecture could transform lives, Philip felt pride. Not pride of possession, but genuine pride in being associated with something so beautiful. And when their eyes met briefly during the speech, there was a recognition, not of love, not yet, but of respect, of possibility, of a path that perhaps could be walked together, not as prisoners of a contract, but as partners in something greater. Philip's first day on the construction site was humbling. He arrived at 6 a.m. in a working-class neighborhood in South London, where the foundation was supporting the construction of a community centre. He wore simple clothes, work boots, and a yellow hard hat. The workers looked at him with suspicion. Some chuckled discreetly. The rich boy came to play labourer. But the foreman, old Jim, a 60-year-old man with calloused hands and a firm gaze, tolerated no disrespect. Here, everyone works equally. It doesn't matter where you came from. What matters is what you do, and you'll do everything I tell you. Understood? Philip nodded, swallowing his pride. Understood. Old Jim gave him his first task. Go carry these bags of cement. They're 50 kilos each. I need 20 up there. Philip looked at the pile of bags, then at the ladder leading to the second floor. He took a deep breath and began. The first few hours were torture. His muscles screamed. His back ached. His hands, accustomed only to pens and keyboards, began to blister, but Philip didn't complain. Each bag was a penance. Each step was a move towards something he didn't yet fully understand, but knew he needed. At noon, when the siren announced lunch, Philip was exhausted. He sat on the ground with the other workers. They ate simple packed lunches, rice, beans, a piece of meat. Philip had brought something similar, at Lara's insistence. No expensive restaurant food. Eat what they eat, live what they live. One of the workers, Joe Carter, a young man with an easy smile, started a conversation. First time, huh? Philip nodded. It's quite different from what I'm used to. Joe Carter laughed. Yeah, but it's honest. At the end of the day, you look and see what you built. That's worth more than any meeting. Philip reflected on that and realized that Joe Carter was right. Weeks passed. Philip went to the site every morning. He learned to mix concrete, lay bricks, level floors. His hands became calloused, his muscles adapted, and something inside him began to change. He talked to the workers, listened to their stories, their struggles, their dreams, and for the first time he understood that wealth was not what he had always thought. Wealth was having a healthy child, having time to be with family, building something with your own hands. Lara visited the sites regularly, always professional, always focused on the project. But she noticed the changes in Philip. He was thinner, stronger, his face was sun-kissed, his hands were bruised, but there was something different in his eyes, a light that wasn't there before. One morning she arrived to inspect the progress and found Philip on the roof helping to install tiles. He was focused, following old Jim's instructions, and when he finished he looked at the work with visible satisfaction. Old Jim approached Lara. "Your husband's doing well. At first I thought he'd give up, but he's stubborn." Lara smiled slightly. "He always has been." Old Jim scratched his beard. "But now it's a different kind of stubbornness. Before it was pride. Now it's determination. There's a difference." Lara watched Philip from afar and had to agree. Something was changing in him. Something deep. One afternoon the unexpected happened. One of the support beams began to give way. The workers noticed and shouted, "Everyone out! Quick!" There was a rush, but one of the younger assistants, Peter, a 16-year-old boy, was trapped. His leg was caught. Philip, who was nearby, didn't think. He ran to Peter, ignoring the shouts. He managed to free the boy's leg and pushed him to safety. But in doing so, he lost his balance. The beam gave way. Philip fell from a height of 3 meters, hitting the ground hard. Chaos ensued. Lara, who was on the other side of the construction site, heard the commotion and ran. When she saw Philip on the ground, unconscious, she felt the world stop. Her heart pounded. Her legs gave way. "Philip!" she screamed, kneeling beside him. The workers had already called for help, but those minutes until the ambulance arrived were the longest of Lara's life. She held his hand, tears falling uncontrollably. "Please, wake up. Please." And at that moment, she realized something she had tried to deny. She still cared, deeply. At the hospital, Lara didn't leave his side. The doctors said it wasn't serious. Bruises, a cracked rib, a cut on his forehead that needed stitches. But he was lucky. It could have been much worse. When Philip finally woke up, the first thing he saw was Lara's face. She was pale, her eyes red. "Peter, how is Peter?" Those were his first words. Lara almost laughed, relieved. "He's fine, thanks to you." Philip closed his eyes, relieved. "Good." Lara watched him. "You were an idiot. You could have been seriously hurt." Philip opened his eyes, meeting hers. "I couldn't leave the boy there." Lara felt her chest tighten. "I know." There was a charged silence. Then Lara whispered, "I was scared." Philip studied her. "Of what?" "Of losing you." The words came out before she could censor them, and, when they fell between them, everything changed. Philip reached out his hand. Lara hesitated but took it. "I'm sorry. For everything. For being who I was. For hurting you. For taking so long to understand." Lara squeezed his hand. "You are changing. I see it." Philip nodded. "Because you showed me what really matters. It's not power. It's not control. It's connection. It's purpose. It's making a difference." Lara felt the tears return. "And now, what do we do with this?" Philip gently pulled her hand, making her sit on the edge of the bed. "I don't know, but I know I don't want to live lies anymore. I don't want a facade marriage anymore. I want truth, and if you can't forgive me, I understand. But if you can give me a chance, a real chance, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserve it." Lara looked at him, at that man who was once a cold stranger but who now seemed genuinely different. "I need time. I need to know if this change is real." Philip agreed. "I'll wait, for as long as it takes." The months that followed were about rebuilding. Philip continued working on the construction sites, now with even more dedication. The foundation grew. New projects were approved. Lives were transformed. And Lara saw, day after day, the change in him solidify. It was no longer just words. It was actions. It was consistent choices. He stopped being the distant executive and became someone present, involved, genuine. They began to spend more time together, not as husband and wife yet, but as partners, friends. They talked about the projects, about the challenges, about the victories, and little by little Lara's guard came down. She laughed at his jokes, shared frustrations, asked for his opinion, and Philip in turn learned to listen, to validate, to be present without trying to control. It was during the National Social Architecture Awards that everything culminated. Lara had been nominated for her work in the revitalization of Trafalgar Square and other community projects. The ceremony was in Washington, D.C., elegant, full of big names in British architecture. Lara looked beautiful, wearing a simple but elegant navy blue dress. And when her name was announced as the winner, emotion overwhelmed her. She went up to the stage, received the trophy, and went to the microphone. I appreciate this recognition. But this achievement is not just mine. It belongs to every architect who believes that our work can transform lives. It belongs to every worker who puts their sweat into every brick. It belongs to every person who dreams of more dignified and humane spaces. And it especially belongs to my father, Robert Miller, who taught me that building is not just about raising walls. It's about building hope. The audience gave a standing ovation. Philip was in the audience in a discreet spot at the back. He didn't want to be on stage beside her. He didn't want to steal her moment. But when he saw Lara there, shining, being recognized for her merit, he felt an overwhelming mixture of pride and regret. Pride for her, regret for almost having destroyed it. And when she came down from the stage, their eyes met. She smiled, a small but genuine smile, and he knew he was on the right path. That night, after the ceremony, they walked together along the National Mall. The night was clear, the stars visible. Lara held the trophy, still processing everything. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice soft. Philip put his hands in his pockets. "I wouldn't have missed it for anything. You deserve all the recognition in the world." Lara stopped, turning to him. "You know, there's something I need to tell you." Philip felt his heart race. "What?" Lara took a deep breath. "During these months I watched you. I saw you changing. And at first I thought it was just a performance, but it's not. You really have transformed, and I didn't expect that." Philip took a step forward. "I didn't expect it either. But you showed me that life can be more, it can be real, it can be true. And I don't want to live without that anymore, without you." Lara felt tears threaten. "I forgave you, Philip. I don't know when it happened. But it did." Philip gently held her face. "I don't deserve it. But I'll spend every day proving that I can be worthy." Lara smiled through her tears. "You already are." They kissed. Not like on their wedding day, cold and mechanical, but for real, with feeling, with promise, with future. When they returned to London, they decided to start over. For real. Philip sold the mansion in Surrey Hills. Together, they bought a smaller, cozier house in Shoreditch near Lara's studio. It was simple, but it had personality. It had soul. And they began to build a real home, with sincere conversations, with laughter, with shared plans, with genuine love. It was Mrs. Beatrice, Lara's mother, who finally gave her blessing. On a visit to the new house, she pulled Philip aside. "My daughter deserves to be loved for who she is, not tamed by who you were." Philip nodded, serious. "I know, and I promise I will love her exactly as she is, every day." Mrs. Beatrice studied his face. "Then I see your mission. Take good care of my treasure," Philip promised, "with my life." Months later, Lara was organizing old documents when she found something. A letter, folded, yellowed by time. It was from her father, the familiar handwriting, firm. She opened it with trembling hands. "My dear daughter, if you are reading this, it is because I am no longer here. But I want you to know that my greatest pride has always been you. You have an immense heart. Don't let the world harden you. Build things that no one can buy or tear down. Build love, build kindness, build hope, and be happy always. With all my love, Father." Lara cried reading those words. She felt her father's presence there, guiding her, blessing her. And when she showed the letter to Philip, he was also moved. "We are building this, Lara, together, something no one can buy or tear down." She agreed, hugging him. We are. And it was in this atmosphere of peace, of reconstruction, of true love, that Lara began to notice changes in her body. Morning sickness, unusual tiredness, a missed period. She tried to ignore it for a few days. But the suspicion grew, until one Saturday morning she decided to take the test. She bought 3 just to be sure, and when they all came back positive, she was paralyzed, pregnant. She was pregnant, Philip's child. A child that wasn't planned, but that somehow made perfect sense. But fear consumed her. What if Philip changed only out of obligation? What if he was being who he was, because there were no real consequences? A child would change everything. She put the tests away. She decided to wait. She needed to be sure that his change was out of love, not out of duty. Weeks passed. Philip remained the same, attentive, present, loving. He woke her with breakfast, massaged her feet when she came home tired, listened to her work stories with genuine interest. And every night before bed he said, "I love you, and I thank you every day for giving me this chance." Lara listened, her heart divided between happiness and fear. She wanted to tell him, but it wasn't time yet. It was on a normal evening after dinner that Philip started a conversation. Lara was on the sofa reading a book about sustainable architecture. He sat beside her. "Can I tell you something?" She put the book aside. "Of course." Philip held her hand. "I've been thinking a lot about the future, about our future, and I realized that you gave me everything I never knew I needed. Purpose, meaning, true love, and I want to build a whole life by your side, not out of obligation, but by choice." Lara felt tears form. Philip continued, "You transformed me. You showed me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, that loving isn't controlling, and that the greatest wealth isn't in bank accounts but in moments like this." He looked at her, his eyes shining. "I love you, not the woman I married out of convenience, but you, the passionate architect, the strong woman, the person who made me want to be better, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it." Lara couldn't hold back anymore. Tears flowed freely, and that's when she knew. He was ready. She was ready. They were ready. She got up, went to the bedroom, and came back with the 3 pregnancy tests in her hand. Philip looked, confused. "What's this?" Lara held them out to him, her voice trembling. "I'm pregnant. We're pregnant." The silence was deafening. Philip looked at the tests, then at Lara, then back at the tests, processing. And then something happened. His eyes filled with tears. He began to stammer. "You are? We're going to? It's true?" Lara nodded, laughing and crying at the same time. "It's true." Philip knelt in front of her, his trembling hands touching her still flat belly. "A child. We're going to have a child." He cried openly, without shame, without restraint. And Lara hugged him, both of them there on the living room floor, crying, laughing, dreaming. When Philip finally managed to speak, his voice was hoarse with emotion. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Lara caressed his hair. "Because I needed to know that you changed for me, not for the baby, not out of duty, but out of love." Philip looked up, his eyes red. "I changed for you, for us, because you showed me that there's a better way to live. And now we're going to have a child. And I swear, Lara, that I will be the father my child deserves. I will be present. I will love. I will serve. I will be everything my father wasn't for me." Lara smiled, her heart overflowing. "I know, and that's why I kept the tests, because I wanted you to know that you were already being that man, even before you knew about the baby." Philip pulled her into a tight embrace. "Thank you for forgiving me this chance, for showing me what really matters." Lara whispered in his ear. "You were already loving both of us. You just didn't know." And there, in that simple living room of a house in Shoreditch, far from mansions and empires, 2 hearts finally found each other. Not out of obligation, not out of convenience, but by choice, by love, by truth. Philip and Lara had started as strangers trapped in a contract, but they were becoming what they always should have been: partners, lovers, a family. And as London continued its chaotic dance outside, inside that house there was peace, there was hope, there was future. Because sometimes the greatest loves are born from the ashes of the greatest mistakes. And the most beautiful stories are those that almost didn't happen. The news of the pregnancy changed everything and at the same time changed nothing. Philip continued to wake up early to work on the foundation's construction sites. Lara continued to lead social architecture projects with her usual passion. But there was something new in the air, a tenderness, a mutual protection, a care that transcended words. They were building not just projects and foundations, they were building a family. Mrs. Beatrice was the first to know officially. Lara invited her for lunch at the new house, and when she served tea, she placed a small box with a baby shoe inside in front of her mother. Mrs. Beatrice opened it, looked, and for a few seconds didn't understand. Then her eyes widened. "You are?" Lara nodded, smiling. "I am. I'm going to be a mother, and you're going to be a grandmother." Mrs. Beatrice stood up so fast she almost knocked over her chair. "My daughter! My goodness!" They hugged, crying, laughing, dreaming together. Philip was in the corner of the room, watching the scene with a smile. Mrs. Beatrice called him over. "Come here, son-in-law." Philip approached, a little shy. She hugged him tightly. "Thank you for making my daughter happy, for becoming the man she deserved." Philip swallowed the emotion. "Thank you for accepting me even after everything." Mrs. Beatrice held his face. "The past is past. What matters is who you are today. And today you are a good man, a man who will be a wonderful father." Weeks passed. Lara's belly began to grow, timidly at first, then more obviously. She loved those changes. She ran her hands over her belly, talked to the baby, sang softly. Philip was fascinated. Every night before bed, he placed his hand on her belly and spoke to their child. "Hi, little one," or "little girl. We don't know yet, but we already love you so much. We're waiting for you, and we're going to take very good care of you." Lara smiled, her heart melting. "You're going to be an amazing father." Philip kissed her forehead. "I'll try. I'll make a lot of mistakes, probably, but I'll be present, always." Lara knew he was talking about his own father, about the absence that marked his childhood, and he was determined to do things differently, to break that cycle, to raise a child with love, presence, and truth. The Robert Miller Foundation was thriving. New projects emerged every month. Affordable homes were renovated, squares were revitalized, schools gained new spaces, and every victory was celebrated by the entire team. Philip had become not just the financier, but an integral part of the team. The workers called him by his first name. They trusted him. They respected him, not for his surname or his money, but for his sweat and dedication. Old Jim, the foreman, became a friend. One day, while they were having lunch together on the site, he started a conversation. "You know, Philip, when you first came here, I thought you wouldn't last a week." Philip laughed. "I thought so too." Old Jim became serious. "But you proved yourself wrong. Not only did you last, but you became one of us, and that's rare. Very rare." Philip felt his chest warm. "Thank you, old Jim. That means a lot." But not everything was rosy. The pregnancy brought challenges. Lara suffered from constant morning sickness in the first few months. There were days when she could barely get out of bed. Philip cancelled commitments to stay by her side. He made teas, prepared toast, held her hair when she needed to. He didn't complain, he didn't get annoyed, he was just there, present. And when Lara apologized for being a burden, he interrupted her. "You're never a burden. You're creating a life, our life, and I'll be here for whatever you need." In the 5th month, they discovered the baby's sex. It was a girl. When the doctor showed the image on the ultrasound and confirmed it, Lara cried, "A girl! We're having a girl!" Philip was speechless, his eyes fixed on the tiny image on the screen. He saw the minuscule heart beating, he saw the tiny fingers forming, and he felt a love so overwhelming he didn't even know he was capable of. "My daughter," he whispered. "Our daughter," Lara corrected, smiling through her tears. Choosing a name was a journey. They spent hours debating options. Philip wanted something strong but delicate. Lara wanted something with meaning. Until one night, leafing through an old book of her father's poems, Lara found a note in the margin. Helena. I always liked that name. Strength and light. Lara looked at Philip. Helena. Lady Helena, his grandmother, had been instrumental in bringing the two families together, and the name meant light. It was perfect. Philip loved it. Helena Miller Blackwood. It has weight. It has history. It has love, Lara agreed. It's her name. Our Helena. From that moment on, they no longer called the baby Little One. They called her Helena, and they talked to her every day. They told her about the projects they were building, about the people they were helping, about the world they wanted to leave for her. But as the pregnancy progressed, Lara's fears also grew. What if she wasn't a good mother? What if she didn't know how to care for her? What if she made mistakes? Philip noticed her anxiety. One night when Lara couldn't sleep, he hugged her. "What's worrying you?" She sighed. "Fear. Of not being enough. Of not knowing what to do." Philip made her look at him. "Lara, you are the strongest, most loving, most incredible woman I know. You're going to be a wonderful mother, and we'll learn together. No one is born knowing everything, but with love we find our way." Lara snuggled into him. "What if she doesn't like me?" Philip chuckled softly. "Impossible. She already loves you. She feels it every time you talk to her, every time you sing to her, every time you place your hand on your belly. And she'll love you even more when she's in your arms." Lara felt peace return. "Thank you for being here, for calming me." Philip kissed the top of her head. "Always. Forever." Preparations for Helena's arrival consumed their weekends. They set up the baby's room together, painted the walls a soft yellow, assembled the light wooden crib, filled shelves with children's books. Philip insisted on placing a mobile with stars and moons that glowed in the dark. "So she always remembers that darkness can also be beautiful." Lara was moved by the gesture. "You surprise me every day." Lady Helena and Lord Anthony visited regularly. They brought gifts, advice, stories. Lady Helena held Lara's belly with tenderness. "This girl will change everything. She will bring even more light to this family." Lord Anthony, usually serious, had a new sparkle in his eyes. "My great-granddaughter, I can't wait to meet her." Philip looked at his grandparents with gratitude. "Thank you for everything, for believing that this marriage could work." Lady Helena smiled. "We didn't believe, dear, we hoped, and you made it happen." Marcus and the Urban Roots team organized a surprise baby shower for Lara. It was at the studio itself, decorated with balloons, banners, and much love. There were simple foods, homemade cake, sincere laughter. Lara received clothes, diapers, toys. But the most special gift came from Marcus. It was a painting, a delicate watercolor showing a revitalized square with children playing. In the corner, a dedication. "For Helena, who will grow up seeing her mother change the world. One brick, one life at a time. With love, Uncle Marcus." Lara cried so much that Julia had to bring an entire roll of paper towels. "You are my family, all of you." Marcus hugged her. "And you are ours. And now Helena is too. We'll teach her architecture from a young age." Philip, who was nearby, extended his hand to Marcus. "Thank you for taking care of her when I didn't know how, for being the friend she needed." Marcus shook his hand. The old resentment finally dissolved. "You're doing it right now. That's what matters." As the end of the pregnancy approached, Philip became almost paranoid. He checked if the car had a full tank, if the maternity bag was ready, if the documents were organized. Lara found it funny and touching at the same time. "Love, I'm still in my 7th month. We have time." Philip shook his head. I want to be prepared. I don't want anything to go wrong. Lara held his face. It won't go wrong. We're together, and that's all we need. But life, as always, had its surprises. In the 8th month, during a routine inspection at one of the construction sites, Lara began to feel contractions. They were spaced out, but painful. Julia, who was with her, panicked. Lara, we need to go to the hospital. Lara tried to keep calm. No, they're just Braxton Hicks, it's normal, but when the pain intensified, she knew it wasn't normal. Julia called Philip immediately. Philip was in a meeting at the Foundation's office when his phone rang. He saw Julia's name and answered immediately. Hello? Philip, it's Lara. She's having contractions. I'm taking her to the hospital now. Philip's world stopped. Coming. Which hospital? Julia informed him. Philip didn't wait for the elevator. He ran down the stairs, got in his car, and drove as he had never driven before. His heart pounded. Please let them be okay, please. At the hospital, he found Lara in the emergency room, being evaluated. By doctors. She was pale but conscious. Philip held her hand. I'm here. I'm here. Lara squeezed back. Is Helena okay? The doctor, a middle-aged man with a calm expression, replied, The baby is fine, but the contractions are real. We'll monitor. If they continue or intensify, we might have to deliver earlier than expected. It's early, but not critical. 8th month is viable. The following hours were tense. Philip didn't leave Lara's side. He held her hand during each contraction, wiped the sweat from her forehead, whispered words of encouragement. You're strong, the strongest I know. And our Helena is too. You two will be fine. Lara, between waves of pain, looked at him. His presence was an anchor. His love was strength. Don't let go of my hand, she pleaded. Never. He promised. Mrs. Beatrice arrived at the hospital around 6 in the morning. Julia called her as soon as she knew. She entered the room, saw her daughter sweating, tired but strong, and felt her heart clench. My girl, my love, you're doing so well. Lara smiled weakly. Mom, so glad you're here. Mrs. Beatrice kissed her daughter's forehead. I wouldn't miss this for anything. She looked at Philip, who was beside Lara, clearly exhausted but absolutely present. And you, son-in-law, you're being the partner she needs. Pride shone in Philip's eyes. I'm trying. Lady Helena and Lord Anthony arrived soon after, bringing coffee and words of encouragement. The waiting room slowly filled up. Marcus, Julia, Theo, Mrs. Martha. Everyone wanted to be there for the big moment, to support, to celebrate. It was a family that went beyond blood. It was a family built with choices, with love, with presence. And everyone waited anxiously for the arrival of little Helena. At 11 in the morning, Dr. Henry returned to evaluate. Full dilation. It's time. Let's go to the delivery room. Lara felt fear and emotion mix. Philip was pale. Can I come? The doctor nodded. Of course. Wear this. He handed him surgical scrubs. Philip put them on quickly, his hands trembling. Lara was taken to the delivery room, Philip by her side, holding her hand as if his life depended on it. The room was bright, full of equipment, of prepared professionals. But for Lara and Philip, there were only the two of them. And the daughter who was about to arrive, Dr. Henry positioned himself. Lara, with the next contraction, you're going to push. Can you do that? Lara nodded, determined. The contraction came. She pushed. Once, twice, 3 times. The pain was intense, but there was a greater purpose. Philip was by her side, whispering, You're doing it. She's coming. Our Helena is coming. Keep going. The minutes turned into an eternity. Each contraction was a battle. Each push was a step. Lara was exhausted, sweat streaming, body trembling. But she didn't give up. She thought of her daughter, of the family she had built with Philip, of everything they had fought for. And that gave her strength. One more, Lara, you can do it, Dr. Henry encouraged. And then, after what seemed like a lifetime, but was only 40 minutes, a cry filled the room. It's a girl, Dr. Henry announced, holding up a small human being covered in vernix, her powerful lungs announcing her arrival into the world. Philip was speechless, paralyzed, tears streaming freely. Lara was breathless, but her eyes immediately sought her daughter. "Let me see. Please." The team quickly cleaned the baby and placed her on Lara's chest, and when mother and daughter looked at each other for the first time, the world stopped. "Hi, Helena," Lara whispered, her voice broken with emotion. "I'm your mother, and I love you so much. So much." The baby, still crying, seemed to calm down upon hearing that familiar voice. Philip approached, his trembling hands touching his daughter's delicate head. "Hi, little one, I'm your dad. Welcome." Helena opened her tiny eyes, still blurry, but trying to focus on the faces around her. And at that moment, Philip understood. He understood the meaning of unconditional love, of absolute purpose, of being willing to give his life for someone. The team needed to take Helena for her first checks. Measure, weigh, evaluate. Philip went with them, never taking his eyes off his daughter. She weighed 3 kilos and 200 grams, 50 centimeters, perfect in every way. When they brought her back, clean and wrapped in a pink blanket, Philip held her for the first time. She was so small, so fragile, so perfect. He brought her close to his face, inhaling that unique new baby smell. I promise to be present. I promise to love you every day. I promise to be the father you deserve, and I will never ever let you feel alone." Lara watched from the bed, her heart overflowing. That man who was once cold and distant now held their daughter with such tenderness, such devotion, that it was impossible not to be moved. Philip brought Helena back to Lara. "She wants her mother." Lara received her daughter, and the three of them stayed there, united, a true family. Philip kissed Lara's forehead. "Thank you. For her. For us. For everything." Lara smiled, exhausted but radiant. "We thank you. For allowing yourself to change, for choosing love." In the waiting room, when the nurse announced that the baby had been born and that everyone was well, there was celebration. Mrs. Beatrice cried. Lady Helena and Lord Anthony hugged. Marcus raised his fist in celebration, and when they were finally allowed to visit, they entered the room with reverence. Helena slept peacefully in Lara's arms. Philip sat beside the bed, his hand in Lara's, his eyes fixed on their daughter. Mrs. Beatrice approached, tears streaming. "May I hold her?" Lara nodded. "Of course, Grandma." Mrs. Beatrice held her granddaughter with infinite delicacy. "She's perfect, just like you when you were born, and she has Philip's eyes." Lord Anthony also approached, his voice choked. "Our great-granddaughter, the continuation of the family, proof that love always wins." Lady Helena simply watched, a serene smile on her face. "You did it. You built something beautiful, and Robert would be so proud." When everyone finally left to give the new family space, Lara, Philip, and Helena were left alone. Night fell over London, and in the small hospital room there was peace. Philip lay on the hospital bed beside Lara, both watching Helena sleep in the transparent bassinet nearby. "She's real," Philip whispered, still processing. "Our daughter is real." Lara took his hand. "And she's the greatest gift life could give us." They remained silent for a while, just absorbing the moment. Then Philip spoke. "You know, I think about who I was a year ago. The cold, controlling, lost man. And I don't recognize that person." Lara turned her head to look at him. "Because you're not him anymore. You allowed yourself to change, and that's the bravest thing anyone can do." Philip smiled sadly. "I almost lost everything by being stubborn, by being afraid to feel." Lara squeezed his hand. "But you didn't lose. You're here, and we're a family." Helena began to stir, making those small noises babies make. Lara picked her up, bringing her closer to nurse. Philip watched, fascinated. "You two are my whole world. Everything I ever needed was here, and I was too blind to see." Lara smiled. "But now you see, and that's what matters. We built something no one can buy or tear down, exactly as my father wrote. Philip remembered the letter, Robert Miller's wisdom, the legacy he left behind, and he understood that the foundation, the projects, all of it was important. But their greatest construction was right there, in that daughter, in that love, in that family they chose to be, not out of obligation but out of true love. I'll tell her everything when she grows up, about us, about how we almost squandered our chance, but how love saved us. Lara agreed. And we'll teach her that people can change, that it's never too late to choose love. The days in the hospital passed quickly. Helena was a calm but alert baby. She fed well, slept well, cried only when she needed to, and Philip was completely smitten. He changed diapers without complaining, rocked his daughter in the early hours, sang off-key lullabies that made Lara laugh. "You're singing it wrong," she would say. Philip would laugh. "Helena doesn't care. She loves me anyway." And it was true. The little one calmed down when she heard her father's voice. She recognized his scent, his touch. When they finally returned home, reality set in. Sleepless nights, always dirty clothes, constant tiredness, but also laughter, discoveries, multiplied love. Philip drastically reduced his professional commitments in the first few months. He wanted to be present. He didn't want to miss a single moment. Every smile, every new sound, every movement was a miracle he didn't want to miss. Lara gradually returned to work after 3 months, but at a reduced pace. Marcus was understanding, making schedules flexible, and Philip took on some of Helena's care. He would sometimes take her to the foundation's office. The workers adored the little one. They lined up to hold her. Old Jim said she was the official mascot of the construction site. "She'll grow up knowing the value of honest work," Philip replied proudly. Months turned into a year. Helena grew up healthy, curious, full of personality. When she took her first steps, it was towards her father, who was kneeling with open arms. "Come on, Helena, come to Daddy." And when she finally reached him, wobbly but determined, Philip lifted her into the air, laughing and crying at the same time. "You did it, my champion." Lara filmed everything, her heart overflowing. For Helena's first birthday, they had a simple party at home, just family and close friends, simple decorations, homemade cake, lots of laughter. Helena, in her little pink dress and a tiny tiara, was enchanted by everything. When it was time to sing Happy Birthday, everyone gathered. Happy birthday to you on this dear day. Philip held Helena in his arms, Lara by his side. Many happy returns, many years of life. And when they reached the end, Philip whispered in his daughter's ear, "Thank you for choosing us, little one." Later, when everyone had left and Helena was sleeping soundly in her crib, Philip and Lara stood on the balcony, watching the stars. "It's been an incredible year," Lara said, her head resting on his shoulder. "The best of my life." Philip agreed. Who would have thought, right, that an arranged marriage would turn into this? Lara smiled. "I guess it was fate, in a twisted way, but it was." Philip pulled her closer. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for giving me a chance to change." Lara kissed him softly. "Thank you for having the courage to change, for choosing love instead of pride." They stood there, embraced in comfortable silence. London sparkled in the distance, indifferent to small human dramas. But in that house, at that moment, there was something rare. There was peace. There was love. There was a family that, against all odds, found its way. Philip thought of his father, Augustus, who was still slowly recovering. He thought of his grandparents, who saw their plan succeed in a way they never imagined. He thought of Robert Miller, whom he never knew, but who changed his life with his kindness. And he thought of Helena, the little one who didn't know yet, but had already transformed everything. She slept peacefully, surrounded by love, growing up in a true home. And Philip knew he would spend the rest of his life ensuring she never doubted that she always knew she was loved, that she had value, that she could dream. Lara looked up, at the sky as if she could speak to her father. "We did it, Dad. We built something no one can buy or tear down. A family, True love. Philip followed her gaze. He's proud, I'm sure. Lara smiled. I think so too. And looking back, she realized that everything had made sense. The difficulties, the mistakes, the reconciliations, everything had led them to this point, to that moment of fullness. And as night embraced London, Philip, Lara, and Helena slept in peace. 3 hearts that met in an unlikely way, but now beat in the same rhythm. The rhythm of love. The rhythm of family. The rhythm of true life. And somewhere between the past and the future, between mistakes and successes, between fear and courage, there was a certainty. They had built something eternal, not with contracts or obligations, but with daily choices, with presence, with unconditional love. And this construction, unlike buildings and squares, would never crumble, because it was founded on what is strongest in the human being: the capacity to change, the capacity to forgive, and the capacity to love despite everything. Philip and Lara had proven that second chances exist, that people can transform, and that true love, the kind that comes from choice and not imposition, is capable of healing, rebuilding, and creating miracles. And Helena, their little Helena, was the greatest proof of that. The miracle born from a contract that turned into love, from an agreement that turned into family, from 2 souls that almost got lost but finally found each other. Forever.